guys, welcome back to a very special bonus episode of Manifest with Tori DeSimone. I'm your host, Tori DeSimone, and today is the first ever bonus episode of Manifest with Tori DeSimone. And it's also, first ever.
Honored.
And it is our first ever book club episode. So I was teasing that I was going to have a guest on for the book club episode, and I could not be more thrilled to introduce our guest, Chelsea Rusnack.
Chelsea Rusnack.
You wife?
I still haven't legally changed my name.
Do you want me to say Chelsea We Met?
No, I'm
Okay.
Chelsea Rusnack.
You're Chelsea Rusnack.
Yeah.
I was at the wedding.
That's
like
me.
you're Chelsea Rusnack.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
This is her.
It is.
Hi, guys.
So this is Chelsea. You guys are going to be seeing a lot more of Chelsea, and we are in Chelsea's gorgeous studio. Why don't you give a little background about who you are, and then we can dive right on into the book. Actually, we're going to pull a tarot card as well. Is it a tarot card?
Oracle.
It's an oracle card.
Yeah, tarot is always consistent with like the actual cards and their meaning. Oracle or can be like different themes. But hi. Can I introduce myself in a way in which
You can
it's
introduce
relative
yourself
to you
however
too?
you want.
Okay, so my name is Chelsea Rusnack, formerly Chelsea We Met, and I met Tori 5 years ago. Our relationship started 5 years ago when Stride Phoenixville first opened. I had just moved home from Louisiana for a short period of time, and I knew when I met you, I can literally picture being on the floor, and it will relate to the book of just there's something that you can feel about someone where it's like, I don't know where this relationship's going to go, but like someone stands out to you. And I just remember feeling very pulled to you. I had no idea of who Tori DeSimone was, or were you Tori Sterling?
I was Tori Sterling around
Your
that
YouTube
time.
yeah. So I'm 33. I feel like I'm that age where YouTube wasn't even, we use YouTube for like Power Hour in college to pregame. Like we didn't watch people. I didn't get into that. Yeah. I am very much a millennial.
And she loves Gen Z.
I love Gen Z. My youngest sister is Gen Z. I learned so much from Gen Z. And now with my career, I really am studying Gen Z because it's the future. And anyways, that's another conversation. So I met Tori 5 years ago, and I was very much at a place in my life where I wasn't sure what I was doing, where I was going. My career, what I do for a living, has always been in the umbrella of hair. And at that time, I had worked for a network marketing company. I had left doing hair. I was a single mom at the time. And it's really full circle that recording this, literally in 2 days, my now husband is adopting my oldest son, Rowan, who will be 10. And so at that time, Matt and I weren't even together. We had broken up coming home from Louisiana. Full story, just full circle of where my career was. I wasn't in the salon. I missed doing hair. I wasn't sure where I was going. I never wanted to go back to the salon per se, but working at Stride, I was attending Stride as a client. I started working the front desk, which is where we got a little bit closer. And I did a braid bar for Stride and started getting my name out there to the community that I was doing weddings.
And
created a
OGs
business.
will remember like
The braid bar.
Yeah, when we would post.
It was your first fall vendor. It was the vendor.
But remember,
day.
we would even just like, you would just do my hair in the lobby.
People would call.
And we would just post it like
People
on my
thought
Instagram
there was a girl
and
at
stuff.
Stride that did hair.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah.
I think that's a great representation of like, if you're doing what you love, things just fall into place. The less that you force it. And I knew I wanted to get back into doing hair. I had always loved the styling side of hair. And so I had put myself on the knot, was doing braid bars at Stride. I was working the front desk at Stride, and things kind of evolved that nomadic artistry was created. Downtown Phoenixville, I remember creating the LLC. I remember messaging you and being like, do you like the nomadic artistry? Or there was some other words I was playing with, but you figure out how to run a business, how to get it started. And that was the beginning of resurfacing my career in the hair industry. And then during COVID, I started diving into my own personal development through lockdown and being at home. I was away from, now I had moved from Phoenixville. Everyone that I knew there, I was now isolated with my boyfriend at the time and my son. Started doing women's circles, attending different courses and classes and really going in myself thinking I was doing this work, which we'll get to. But I loved reading different books, listening to different podcasts. Podcasts weren't really so much. I feel like podcasts really just in the last like 2 years are getting bigger of like, I use it more as a resource. But back then I just was craving more. So the weddings were starting to really take off and I was feeling this essence of like hair healing. And now flash forward, this was not the plan. And I think why I love this book, it just relates to so much of just what this last year has been. If there was like, you know, when you watch a movie and at the end there's like blooper reels, if there was a blooper reel in the sense of like how many times I've said to someone or on my own Instagram stories or posts of like this last year, my birthday is November 4th. And last year around this exact time, eclipse season, without knowing that at the time, I really started feeling like, who am I? Post Saturn return, who am I? What am I moving towards? Like life is happening and I'm now married. I had the second baby. Life was starting to slow down from this like hustle, survival, single mom life. Who am I? What am I doing? And I could feel that something wasn't working. And I felt like this underlying sensation of there's got to be more than what I'm doing. It doesn't mean that I'm not happy, but a little did I know you start peeling that layer back and then it's like, are you really ready to do this? This was the hardest year of my life. And through doing this work, discovering like, who am I not to have a studio? Who am I not to have my own storefront to be able to do this thing called Head Spa? And you were the first one that I brought this concept to, and you were like, I think there's this YouTube video you need to watch. I didn't know what a head spa was. I had this dream in West Virginia. And here we are 5 years later recording a podcast on the couch in my studio. It's so, there's no way to really put that into words of like,
so now
so much more there.
Do head spa.
Yeah.
Is do the right word? Is practice? Like
there's
what's the
this
word?
term I've heard used called a head spa-nist or something.
I love that.
You
do? Yeah, you don't?
No.
Okay, you'll create your own then.
Yeah. I like hair healing.
Mm-hmm.
I really do consider myself like a healer. I'm comfortable now saying I'm a healer. I'm an intuitive. That's a whole other,
And the reason I wanted you specifically as the guest for this book is because this was the first time you read this book. Yes. You didn't know it, but I knew it. You eat, sleep, live, breathe this book.
Yes.
Like the concept of it.
I get it now.
Is 100% Chelsea. And I'm so glad that when I asked you to be the guest for this, you were like, yeah, absolutely.
It's a really big compliment. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. So there was no one else that I wanted to have this conversation with because this book is the waking up that you've done the past year.
Yeah.
Like Chelsea really went through a journey, and I think we need a whole separate episode on that journey because I think a lot of people crave that, but they don't know where to begin or it feels very harsh to dive really deep within yourself. And it's hard because firm boundaries have to be made. You have to really look within yourself and realizing, waking up, the awareness that we're going to get into with this book. It's uncomfortable and it's difficult and it takes work.
Every day. Still right now.
Yes.
Every day is uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
It takes work, but it's a rewarding uncomfortable because on the other side of it is bliss.
I'm happy in the uncomfortability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's enlightenment.
Yeah.
It's aware. Like, I don't think this book talks about freedom. I don't think there's anything more freeing than being aware and awake to your higher self.
You're freeing yourself from yourself. What is more liberating than feeling like I can be as messy and chaotic and all these things I used to shame myself for and
yeah.
And that's like, it's
yeah.
I'm wild and
yeah. So that's why I really wanted Chelsea on for this book, but we are going to be doing so many more episodes together in the future. We have a series planned out that I'm so excited to get into.
It's so deep.
You want to tease it a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah. Or do you want me to?
give a little spice and I'll add to it.
So the series that Chelsea and I are going to do, it's going to begin with 2 parts. So Chelsea's brand is called Intimately Ivy. And I don't think we mentioned that.
No.
But
so yeah.
the nomadic artistry.
I need more of a history in my
rebranded.
background than who are you?
So the nomadic artistry rebranded to Intimately Ivy. And it's essentially a brand about intimacy, somatic healing, etc. I'd say
Inner you.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
And
intimacy with yourself.
she does a lot of healing through the head. The crown is how you would describe
the head,
it.
heart, and womb.
So when it comes to intimacy, I want to begin with a 2-part series about intimacy within ourselves and intimacy with others, which could include sex. I very briefly talked about that on a podcast episode a few weeks back called This One's for the Girls, where I opened up about sex, and I got a lot of girls right back to it and was like, I want you to talk more about this.
Really?
But I don't have the words.
Yeah.
And I don't have the expertise. Like, I am the girl that's like, I want to hear more about this.
It's that taboo
and that's where you come
topic. So a reference in
incredibly.
astrology, Scorpio, which, holy shit.
Yeah.
We're officially in Scorpio season right now.
Happy Scorpio
season. Cheers. Scorpio is the sign of death and rebirth. So if you think of the way the seasons work, we're right on the precipice of heading into winter, which always reminds me of hibernation. And we're getting ready for that. We're heading inward. So Scorpio season is where things go to die, but they also get reborn.
And how relevant with this book that we're recording that today. It's so relevant.
And we have a full moon this Saturday, and it's eclipse season. But regarding Scorpio, I have 6 placements in Scorpio. And when I had my chart read this past year by someone who's now a great friend of mine, realizing that I have 6 placements in Scorpio, Scorpio is the zodiac of taboos. And so it's very comfortable for me to talk about things that are typically known as uncomfortable things like sex.
And
pleasure.
for me, it is so uncomfortable to talk about
It's your
sex.
Chiron, which is your wounded healer.
it's
It's
so-
like you want to go there, but it
just feels wrong to talk about it, honestly. And for you, it feels very freeing. And we'll get into that in the series, but that's pretty much where it's going to go to. And then other things. Like, I definitely want to have you on and talk about the journey you went through the last year of your inner self and an opening head spa and realizing, because you almost quit hair for a minute, like you really had a journey
this year.
Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Like you really had a journey to get here.
Yeah.
But that's why I wanted you on for today, because you eat, sleep, live, breathe this book. And I haven't even mentioned the book. The book for the Manifest Book Club is The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. And so today
I never heard of it before. You
Really?
No, and the different circles that I'm in. No.
Oh, that makes me so happy that you found this book.
Yeah, and out of the books I've read this past year, this puts so many different ones of them like in one. So I'm excited to actually not just talk about it, but for your listeners, if they're looking for a starting place, this really is a great place to start.
It is. It's a short book. It's deep, but it's digestible. It's very bite-sized, and it relates no matter what you're going through in your life. I am going through yoga teacher training, and so much of what I'm learning in yoga teacher training, this was a great prerequisite to, because I just felt like I entered it with a space of awareness that I needed to be open-minded to what I'm learning in yoga teacher training. When I come here and get my head spas done, very much so what you speak on, this was a great prerequisite to everything that we talk about.
Sure.
So I'm really excited to dive into this book, but let's pull a card.
Yes, let's pull a card.
Let's pull a card. Let's pull a card. So these are oracle cards.
They have little vaginas on them. If you're wanting to like tap more into like your feminine energy, I could.
We need to do a whole episode on that.
Yeah,
too.
like it's.
I'm about to enter my feminine era, and I'll talk about that later.
Feminine energy. Yeah. The things that are taboo, like looking at a vulva, is such like a taboo. It is so taboo, but you have one. I'm sure you've never even looked at it. So there's that. But these are all positive women cards. The author of these cards, her name's Lisa Lister, and she also has this book. She's a couple of them, but her book, Self Sorcery, we should do a book club on that.
100%.
You would, yeah.
And the last time I was in here, Chelsea pulled my card in. It could not have been more relevant. And you said, and so it is. And now I say that every single day. And so it is. Okay, what'd you pull?
This card is so good. My client that got pulled yesterday, so it's like on my mind, but it's potency. And then you just look up in the book. Every card has its own meaning. So with tarot, each card has its own meaning, but it's a lot of like how you decipher the card to be as the reader, where what I just love about these is she does like an overview of the card, an affirmation, which you talk about affirmations on your podcast with manifesting. So it gives you something to like bite size. So it's one word and then there's like a deeper meaning. And these are all related to somatic work, which soma is the Greek word for your body. So connecting to your soma is separating from your head and thinking, which is so much of this book, and dropping into the body. And that's a lot of what we do at HeadSpot is, yes, we're working on your head, your crown, which is your connection to higher consciousness, but you're dropping into your body to feel what's really going on. And it's through feeling your feelings and emotions that you're able to sit with what's really going on out of your head and your thoughts and your mind, and feeling the emotions to see what's really there, to move past it. You change your vibration, you change your subconscious, you change your reality. Short version. Okay, so potency. I am she who's been there, done that, and seen it all, and I can hold it. I'm ancient and I'm future, and I'm everything in between, just like you. When you know that you can hold it, magic, power, pleasure, it potentizes, it grows in strength, and its power deepens. You live life more fully, and you make choices based on what you want rather than what others in your life need from you. You give more easily to others once you've given well to yourself. Cut through the bullshit of the optics of words said and unsaid and go straight to blood and bone. Call out comparing yourself to others and worrying about what others may think, and call up what's real and honest and true. Let it potentize. Affirm it. I'm a potentizing container for magic and medicine. Want to say it back with me? I'm a potentizing container.
I'm a potentizing container
for magic and medicine.
For magic and medicine.
We're here. We're so quick to give away our power and magic and medicine that we rarely know what it feels like to hold it in our body. Yet it's an ancient priestess and witchery skill to cultivate a vessel, our body, that's able to contain, hold, and potentize magic and power. Take a seed of possibility, a dream, an idea, and hold it. Don't share it with anyone, but tend to it daily. Write about it in your journal. Hold it in your pelvic bowl and let the seed of potential potentize. Let it become fueled by your medicine and magic before sharing it with the world, which is so, if you think about, there's so many layers to like, I hate the word paganism, and I hate labels. Like, you could say that the things that I study would make me like, oh, do you think you're a witch? Like, I hate labels. But if you think seasonally where Halloween is used in a lot of cultures instead of the New Year, where we set intentions on the New Year. It doesn't make fucking sense to set intentions in the dead of winter. You don't plant anything in the dead of winter. What's going to grow there?
So true.
But in Scorpio season, if we use Halloween as a time to write it down, what do you want to dream about? Who do you want to be? Plant it, and then go within, kill the inner self that needs to die, and then let it grow and sit with that intention over the winter. Do the inner work. You don't have to tell everybody what you're doing. You don't have to post about everything that you're doing. You don't have to share every thought that's on your mind. Lesson learned myself.
Ain't
and let it grow.
truth?
And then come out in the spring with this manifestation of what you potentized, right?
What a card.
What a card.
What a card.
What a good way to start.
Let's get into it.
Where do you want to start?
I'm really excited. All right, so I have some questions here, guys, and I'm going to link down below where I got a lot of these questions. The way that I found them, some I made myself. One I found on there was a Google Doc, and I'll link it down below. It must have been like a book club or studied in a philosophy class or something. And they were really great episode or questions. So I pulled a few from there. But I also pulled some from Reddit. There's a big Reddit community of this book. And along with that, Michael Singer, who is the author of this book, he talks a lot about the concepts in his book. And I will link that down below as well. It's a Dropbox and it looks like code when you open it. But if you like, at first I was like, what, am I somewhere I shouldn't be? It looks like code, but they're just web links. So if you just copy one of them and put them in your browser, it's going to take you to a talk of his. They're very good. If you're just craving more after reading this book, pick any of the talks and listen to them. They're all very powerful and they're all very good. But let's dive in. So I have 11 questions. We'll see how many we get through because if you guys can not already tell, Chelsea and I just chat and go on tangents.
I just thought of that.
So let's begin with, I was going to have an open discussion of the book, but let's go into the questions.
Okay.
Because I imagine our questions are going to bring us into an open discussion as
Yes.
it is. Okay. So let's begin with the inner roommate, the inner chatter. That's how the book opens up. And I have the book with me if you want to reference any pages or anything.
Okay.
Now, you listened on audio.
I was going to say, when you were talking earlier about like it's a very digestible book, it's only 6 hours, which I feel like is short.
Yes.
I don't do much audio, but if you drive a lot, like I got through this book within a week because of it being audio. So it's very quick.
Yes.
But yeah,
it's
I loved it on
bite-sized.
audio.
So I've read it and Chelsea listened on audio. So it's good you're getting both perspectives. And I feel like we both are getting a very big impact regardless of how you digested the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so the inner roommate, the inner chatter, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Were you able to make the distinction of the voice in your head and you? Were you able to separate that you are not the voice in your head, and what was that realization like?
I think, yes. I think this book is one of those books where you'll read it the first time or listen to it, and it's not that it's heavy information, it's digestible, but I know for a lot of people it might be the first time they're hearing these concepts. So I feel like no matter if you would have had me read this with you last year, it would have been a different perspective versus even 5 years ago, a different perspective. Have me reread this book now reading it next year and it's a different perspective.
Totally.
So I think the concepts in this book, the language in it, will always, wherever you're coming into reading it, it's what foundation do you currently have of self-reflection, awareness, and the concepts in this book of where you're starting. So when I came into reading this book, because of having such an intense year of a lot of these concepts and becoming a somatic mind-body coach as well, like it had somewhere very firm to land. So hearing the concept of the inner roommate, oh my God, that was the biggest thing for me this year. Was I knew the way that I love how he writes this book is there's so many analogies that make it very practical to then see it reflective in your own life. It's not, there's a lot of authors of these kind of books that it's very like Dr. Joe Dispenza, like he's so great, but it's very heavy information that's like, oh, it's so sciencey.
Deepak Chopra is another one. Like
There's good
he's
stuff.
like levitating, man. Like he's like not even like on this earth. Like he's so transcendent and so enlightened that when he speaks, sometimes it's really hard to be on his level. But Michael Singer does such a good job.
Was really good
bringing it down to earth.
And listening to it on Audible, I honestly felt like I was listening to a podcast. My husband thought it was a podcast because I would just stick it to my mirror in the morning doing my makeup and he'd be in the shower like, is that a podcast? Because even the voice is very soothing to listen to. But the inner roommate, mine, I kind of look at her, one of my coaches had described, I look at the inner roommate like my ego as well. Mm-hmm. And she would say, your ego can ride in the car with you, but she just can't ride shoddy. And I think of that all the time, that when my inner voice was so loud, she's still very much there, but I catch it in real time. And then I just look at it and observe it as a roommate, if you will, and be like, who's this speaking? Where did that come from? Why is it that you just had that thought? And I'm able to work with it in real time instead of it letting it build and fester and turn into a whole story, turn into a whole identity. But I very much can see where I have a voice that's chatter in my mind. There was always chatter in my mind, but that controlled my whole life.
Yes. When I get anxious, it's because I identify with the chatter. And I'm like, you know what? That is my reality. And like, I am those thoughts in my brain. And when I'm able to separate, like, that is not me. I feel, honestly, maybe this is a hot take with this book. You could read the first 3 chapters and put it away, because anything after chapter 3 is just it's based off the first 3 chapters. Like, once you understand that you are not the voice in your head, everything after that is a state of awareness and freedom. And that's what the rest of the book is. It's like the freedom that comes with learning that you are not the voice in your head. I think you should read the whole book, but I think if you just like
really grasp
the first 3, like, you got it. You got the concept of the book. And I remember reading the first this is page 13. I'm like having like a crisis. Oh yeah, I mark up all my books.
That's the
like
benefit
this.
of actually yeah.
That's also why I normally read on a Kindle,
yeah.
but books like self-help books and stuff, spirituality
there's
books,
nothing like
I get the physical because I write
That's
them.
awesome.
But I also think in terms of the podcast, I'm like, oh, I could talk about this on the podcast and things like that. So I wrote, I am not the voice. If I'm not the voice, then who am I? The voice says I like, and then I wrote all these things that I like. But am I the observer of the voice? Who am I? But who is the observer? And are they the same person? So like it immediately makes you feel like, okay, am I 2 different people? And then you can spiral quickly. But what I was getting at earlier was that when I feel anxious, sad, stressed out, any sort of emotion where I'm living in my head, that's when I identify with the voice in my head. And when I read this book and was then able to detach myself from that voice, that state of awareness and waking up to it is very freeing, because you're able to detach yourself from that emotion of being like, okay, I'm experiencing anxiousness, but I am not anxious. And then it goes deeper into the question of, who am I?
This is the somatics to be able to say then, this is me anxious. This is me experiencing anxiousness. And also him shining a light that there is no negative emotion. They're all just emotions. When you coin it as this is a negative feeling to feel, it immediately is going to put you in a bodily state of feeling bad, because we perceive one feeling as negative, which negative is then bad. So then you feel bad, where if you take yourself out of it and just experience the feeling to see and peel back that layer of, well, what is creating that feeling here? And how can I get to a place of, well, his chapter on the heart was just profound, because it all comes back to love.
Yes.
And
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that one hit home for you, the heart chapter.
Oh, because of the foundation of where it was landing, especially this is coming in the middle of my life work and the series that we're in for Intimately Ivy, with going over the head, heart, and womb and what they're connected to. But really your heart it's the center of all your chakras.
Yeah.
And if you always come back to a place of love, then you can feel anxiousness and still feel love for yourself. And when you're taking care of yourself, it immediately separates the outside world and your inner world. That, like, are you living for everything outside of you? This whole book is about coming within yourself. And if you're content within yourself, then everything outside of it disappears.
It's
wild.
It's wild.
Yeah.
I learned this in yoga teacher training. I'm sure you know this, but there are over 700 chakras. We focus on the main 7. They all intersect at the heart.
They all intersect at the heart.
At the heart.
No shit.
It's
I'm not
wild.
surprised at all.
It's so wild. Okay, question 2. Throughout reading the book and in your day-to-day life, have you found your inner chatter to be louder, or have you been able to bring awareness to it and silence it at times?
Oh, I laugh at her. Literally. And the head spa has
How freeing.
How freeing to just laugh, or just Because a lot of my inner chatter is I perceive her as one or two people most of the time. I have a lot of versions of myself within myself. And most of the time, the person who's talking in me, I view her as either this 17-year-old Chelsea, like a teenage Chelsea, or this really little Chelsea. And it's like, who's speaking right now? What is it that you need? And how can I give you that love so that we can move on from this, so that this isn't, because what he mentions so much is like, the things that bother you or irk you or trigger you are not the same things that bother other people. Like his example of a type of flower blooming, like why would that bother some people? Well, all we need to know is that your girlfriend broke up with you at the time of the season when those flowers came into bloom. And now your perception is when you see this thing, it brings up this emotion. The somatic says that your mind is 10% of our lived experience. Your body remembers. So even though you don't remember something that happened when you were 3 years old, your body does. So you don't realize when life is happening and life is lifing, things are going to constantly come at you. And if you're creating this world for yourself to keep yourself safe and control everything, oh my God, but that was
that
me.
chapter on control
That was me.
Really, because it's true. We always want to control everything that we possibly can, even our own chatter. Like this morning, I was getting ready to come here and I wanted to do a bunch of things before I came here. And I was already like just waking up being like, you know, it's okay if I don't get everything done, but I want to get everything done, but it's okay if I don't. And it's just like a constant back and forth battle all the time within your mind. And you want to just control everything from your mind to the outside. And it's just like, the more you try to control, the less freedom you have.
I think that's really powerful for your listeners to hear you say that, because I think where people get caught up with spirituality or doing this work is you don't go into it thinking, or maybe you do, that there's this end date of it and then things are just now you just have ease in your life. It gets harder in some aspects, but you're still going to have conflict in your life. You're still going to have these moments where you're still trying to do and achieve in your own way, but it's the awareness to observe what you're doing and be like, how are you going to handle that then, Tori?
Yeah.
And not let it spiral into now that controls your whole day. And then it's the end of your day and you're like, why did I let this one thing? And then there you have the other level of that awareness where that could turn into weeks. And so it's this concept that life is going to have ups and downs, and without awareness we go through really big ups and things are like really good, and then something happens and now we're like, that controls so much. You feel that tightness in your chest, you feel anxious, you're trying to control, you're sending messages, trying to get reactions out of people or however you're working with it, that you have these high highs and low lows, versus getting to this place of just a nice steady up and down where you're going to have things that happen that are great, but it's how you perceive negative things, that it's more, what is this showing you? So what happened this morning for you wasn't negative. It was shining on a light. Is this serving me? And what can I do in this moment to get to a place of love for myself, that I have more ease in my day?
Not to make everything about yoga teacher training, but we're reading a book.
Yoga's more about your life than it is this workout.
Oh
so
God, yoga
you're helping
is
people
not
to
a
see
workout.
that. Yeah.
Like it is, the workout is
lifestyle.
one part of yoga. It's the poses are one part of yoga. And I'll get into it. Like once I conclude yoga teacher training, I think I'll make a whole episode or a series on. It's just wild. But reading this one book, it's called the Bhagavad Gita, and I've mentioned it before on this podcast, but everything that this book talks about, we're learning in the Gita and yoga teacher training. And
Gita?
The Gita.
What's the Gita?
I'll tell you after the episode, because I don't want to say anything wrong.
relevant?
I don't want to say anything wrong on air and have people come after me, because I'm still learning. Like I really don't know much. But what I'm getting at is that there's a part in the Gita that pretty much says, like, the more you know, then you're going to do right. Like once you are awake or aware, or knowledge is power, essentially. So when you know more, you're going to do more. And
or when you do
good.
something that is a past behavior, you do witness yourself and you're like, what?
Yes.
Girl, you knew that doing that was going to get you that result, and you don't shame or blame. You're just like,
you just observe.
You just
observe. And that's what it's the awareness of being the observer. Because we live, think about consciousness. I was listening to an episode probably a year plus back. I'll link it below. It's an Andrew Huberman podcast, and he
That's
had
heavy.
a scientist on that talked about consciousness. And he was like, we as humans tend to identify as passengers, right? Like when we're looking out, we see all these people, we see the cars, I see you, I see your studio. I identify behind my face. Would you agree? Like I can't see my face, but I can see my arms, I can see my chest, I can see my stomach, I can see my legs. Like I identify really behind my face. And that's the passenger of your life, the observer of your life. And this book questions and challenges you to go deeper of like, well, what's behind? What's within? Who are you, the observer, or are you the one observing?
Yeah. And it makes it easier then for the love you have towards other people, because it's not about you. And once you know that your own life is a reflection of everything within you, if something is triggering you, it has everything to do with you, not the other person or the other thing. It gives a compassion that instead of being out of my body and pointing a finger and being like, if you would just stop doing this thing, I wouldn't feel this way. And this book gets you to see if you are content within yourself and see why that thing or that what that person said, why is that having that visceral reaction in your body? If you can sit back and say, what is the lived experience with me? What was the childhood experience that's doing like the child inner work of like seeing what is it within me that is creating this experience because of what this person is saying. It has nothing to do with them. It has everything in our life. It always comes back to us. And that is so hard to accept.
That's hard. And that's what I'm saying. Like the more you know, the more you're kind of forced into doing what you know. So like if you're aware of this, realizing that if someone pisses you off, it has nothing to do with them and everything to do with you. That's hard.
And doing that every day.
Every
now
day.
You're walking around
aware of this.
Aware of it. And oh my God, but how liberating and freeing, because you go further within and you sit with yourself and you peel back these layers, and then you have more love and compassion for what is still living within me, what is clearly still alive that I'm refusing to look at or refusing to admit, or because it's so painful. And like, there's some surface level like bullshit stuff we could talk about, but then there's like a lot of us have experienced trauma in our life and a place within us that wasn't loved and nurtured in a way that we desire to. So we have to reparent ourselves. We have to go within and talk to the inner child and give them that love and compassion, and the inner teenager for what they need. And that's what the layers of this is, that the more you start peeling back, you clear up these unfinished stories. You rewrite the story, you heal that, so then your life does get easier. So life is still happening and it's uncomfortable, but then you're less triggered by certain things. You move past that, and then life starts to open up where you feel this was the first year, even though being so uncomfortable, this was the first year I have not a memory, but like the active awareness of going for a walk and being like, look at the trees. Oh my God. And then like laughing at myself and being like, I'm the person who like looks at the trees and like hugs trees. And like my 2-year-old goes up, and if he like smacks a tree with a stick, I'm like, no, why did we do that? And let's give the tree a hug. Like, yeah, you do seem a little cuckoo, but I'd rather be perceived as someone off her rocker and like into
Crunchy.
the woo-woo. And call me all of that.
Love crunchy.
Because I love myself in a way that I never thought that I could. So what you truly think of me, go ahead, test me,
it's not
trigger
your
me. So let
business.
me see where I'm at. Like bring it towards me so I can see what work I've really done of how I really desire to be in my life. And what he says, we're all walking towards death. Like, I don't know. I literally could die tomorrow. Am I going to spend so much of my time being out of my body, being consumed of everything outside of myself, instead of choosing peace and joy? Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
We're getting
Where
good.
do you want to go?
Everywhere. I want to get everywhere. I'm still like, even in the beginning of the book, and I focus so much in the beginning because the beginning is so hard hitting. Like once you nail the beginning, the rest of the book is just like an expansion pack, honestly. Okay.
Yeah.
In the opening of chapter 2, Singer writes, your inner growth is completely dependent upon the realization that the only way to find peace and contentment is to stop thinking about yourself. What does he mean by this? How do you think about yourself? Why is ceasing to think about yourself so connected to finding contentment? Could a thought actually be harmful to you? And could your thoughts be creating barriers to your growth? Now, we kind of dove into this, which I'm glad that we did, but I also wanted to talk about this because this concept is literally why this show is named Manifest with Tori DeSimone, because this is the law of attraction. Your thoughts manifest into your reality. What we think becomes what we see, what we hear, what we experience. Like, I'm looking at a blue car right now, and I'm currently in the market for a new car. And if I'm looking only for blue cars, that's going to become my entire reality. So right there, my thoughts have now become my reality. And that's just basic law of attraction, basic manifestation. And also in the Gita, not to bring everything back to the Gita, but also in the Gita, there was a line in it that was so empowering. And it pretty much, I wish I had it with me. I do, but it's in my car. It says, our life or our reality, one of the two, is a perception of our nervous system. And if that ain't the truth, like if you're sick, that's how you perceive your life, that you're viewing it through a sick lens of life. If you're happy and your nervous system is at peace, you experience life in a happy manner. And it's just your thoughts become your reality. So to bring this back to the question, why is ceasing to think about yourself so connected to finding contentment? And could a thought actually be harmful to you? And could your thoughts be creating barriers to your growth?
I'll take this one.
Go ahead.
This was a toxic thing for me in my life for a while, because what I didn't realize, that the next layer of that is your subconscious. Your subconscious is what's creating your reality, because as a mom, I would have these thoughts that my kids were going to die. Like I would have visions of, with everything going on in the world, that Rowan wasn't safe at school and that someone would bring a gun to school. Or what if Reagan is playing outside at the babysitter's house and he runs out into the street? And so I was having thoughts, and then was like, oh my gosh, I don't want my thoughts to become a reality. If I'm constantly thinking about that, am I manifesting that? And this is why coaching and therapy, knowing the difference of that scope of practice, but I highly recommend therapy for everyone, not waiting for... can I just say, as someone who lived nearly a decade of having a past relationship with a drug addict and have a single mom, like it took me nearly 10 years to actively get therapy. We all have had a life where things were happening where we weren't taught these things. And when you're getting started with this work, I recommend doing it alongside a coach and or a therapist. And we will talk about that another time, of like knowing the difference, but your subconscious is what creates your reality. So I'll give the example that this morning, my 9-year-old, trying to teach these practices to a 9-year-old, I said, Rowan, can you go downstairs and get your brother's shoes? I went upstairs, finishing getting ready, came downstairs, and I said, where's your brother's shoes? I couldn't find them. I fucking knew they were down. I knew they were downstairs. I could see in my mind that they were right in front of the toys. I went downstairs and they're right there. I said, Rowan, please come here. I wanted to yell. I wanted to be like, what the fuck? I asked you to come see this. So it's having the awareness of like what I'm saying is going to have an effect on him and creating this human. But I said, Rowan, if this is exactly what we're talking about, is that if he'll say, I didn't see it, I couldn't find it. It's always that story of like, I couldn't find it. You know how kids are. They go downstairs and he was just like, I can't find it.
Like, do it, yeah.
You didn't want to do it. And so I said to him, whatever you're thinking constantly is going into your, like, he knows the difference of his conscious versus his subconscious. So he can actively start thinking, if he tells himself that he's not good at something, he's speaking that life into himself. So this is where the thoughts become harmful, of knowing, if you say that you have a fear that your child is going to die, like acknowledge that if you're a parent or whatever your fear is, your fear isn't going to manifest in a way that, like, because you were thinking about that, like, it takes a lot of momentum to create something into your reality. Be aware of your thoughts. So in the sense that a thought can be harmful, if you're thinking about something every day and telling yourself a story that I'm not beautiful, and I think I'm ugly, and I'm not worthy of finding a relationship because I don't think I'm beautiful, that is a harmful thought, because you're now creating that into your subconscious without thinking about it. That's your subconscious. Without thinking about it, it's manifesting. The example of the blue car, you thought about it, you put that into your subconscious. So now you're going around in your day, and your conscious mind is what's aware in real time. Your subconscious has now built a programming of looking for that blue car. So now you see it and you're like, oh my gosh, I brought that into my reality. But having a thought about something that is fearful for you, as that example, it's not going to you can't just think about something happening to your child, like relinquish that from your life, because that is harmful. Like, I don't want someone to think that like that's why understanding this work on a science level of how your brain works, how your body works, that these aren't just woo-woo concepts, and yoga isn't a woo-woo concept. It is rooted in science of how your body is electro organisms, and everything is a vibration. Like, you are a vibration. It's all science based, that your subconscious is what's creating your reality. So if you're constantly telling yourself a story that is not serving who you do want to be, you've got to become aware of what you are saying to yourself, and then practice, which it's all a practice. Life is a practice of rewriting that story so that you do find the beauty within you to say, I am beautiful. I am worthy of love. And that's where that self-intimacy comes back in, that the way that you view yourself and the relationship that you have with yourself is what's going to create your outside world first.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
It's deep.
These
are deep things.
These are deep concepts. And this is a book that I was talking to some friends as they were reading it. I was like, when I first read this book, I read a chapter a day and then I'd sit with it, because
That's
it's
good.
deep, and you want to like really apply what you're reading to your life. Otherwise you're just, and I think you also have to be open to receiving this information.
I was just going to say, ask yourself, what is your intention? Why read this? Do I want to read this because Tori DeSimone recommended it to me?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that's like, okay, like, I value you.
Right.
I align with you. So if you like it, I must like it. And
Right.
that coincides, like, not everything is for everyone, and not every spiritual practice is going to resonate with everyone the same. Like, just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But ask yourself, like, going into this, what is your intention? Because that's what it's going to come down to, is like that. It's like having your why for anything. Why do you want to read this?
And it's like what you said in the beginning, like, if you read this a year ago, it would have landed differently than it landed today. And when you read it in a year, I can't even imagine what our life is going to be like in a year, how differently it's going to land then.
Yeah.
So if this book did not resonate with you, or it was maybe really hard to get through, pick it up again in 6 months, pick it up again in a year, because you're going to get a completely different experience out of it. Like, when I first read this book, it was over the summer, in the beginning of summer, and I was in a totally different place than I was now.
Just the difference of a couple months.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it didn't land, try it again in a few months, but also just be open to receiving. And I think you bring up a really good point. Ask yourself, why am I reading this?
Yeah.
And what do I want to get out of this at the end of this book?
Yeah.
And it might be the beginning of the book. You might have one answer, and at the end it might be completely different.
Where you are in your life currently is going to reflect on what you're going to get out of this. Like, are you currently in a state of turmoil? Are you currently in a state, like, are you on a high point of your life right now? Or are you in that low point? And where are you coming into reading this? That there is so much hope in this book. No matter where you are, there's so much hope in this book, and giving you tangible examples for you to see. You can even just read this to just start the process of what would it look like to start doing the work, because you don't realize what you're getting into when you say, I'm ready to do it and I'm ready to commit to this work. Buckle up. You're probably going to get sick because you're bringing so many emotions up. Like, that's spiritual ascension. Like, there's a word for that, of like getting sick while doing this work, is because you're bringing up emotions and you're bringing up toxins in your body of like what has been so stored and dormant, and you're bringing that up. Like, And doing this over the fall and winter is a great time because you need rest. So I think I think your advice to doing it in chunks is great. So you can read it, let it digest. I don't know when and if you want to talk about integration, but like integrating this information, reading this. I used to be the person that would read this and be like, all of that makes sense. That's great. And then I maybe would like make
talk about integration.
Oh,
how
my
can
fucking
people
God.
apply this to their life?
Oh my God. So I think it's important to say, using myself as an example, everyone, if you're listening to this, and when you go to read this, you have your own life. You have your own lived experience. You are unlike anyone else in the world. Every single person is. You cannot compare yourself to someone else because you are not them. You don't have their background. You weren't raised by the same parents. You don't have the same human design. You don't have the same astrology. You are quite literally your own individual. And like, what a blessing for that. You have your own gifts, but you also have your own lifetime of trauma and stories that are stored up in you, whether you are aware of them or not. So when you read something like this, when you listen to a podcast like Tori's, you might be activated. You might feel that feeling inside of you that says, I resonate with what she's saying. Just because you're listening to it, it doesn't change your life. And coming from someone who spent so much of her life listening to these things or reading these books and being interested in it, and then maybe like talking about it on Instagram stories or creating a post about it, or then even a podcast, I very much could be the person who would read something and then want to teach about it because it interested me, because it did light me up. But it lives a very different experience in your life if you apply it. Integration is taking this information and then living it out. Integrating it means bringing it into your life. If you read this, then the integration would be to start being aware of your inner voice, and then tracking in a notebook or in your phone when you have that thought, not shaming, not judging it, writing it down. What was that thought? What was something that triggered you that week? What was something that someone said that sent you into an anxiety or a panic attack? Did you drink too much coffee? Notice how the coffee is making you feel. Are you making the connection that every time you have coffee, you start to have anxious thoughts? You start to have a racing mind of thinking, I think everybody hates me. What if nobody likes me? This person isn't texting me back. Or then you go on social media and now you're comparing yourself to every person on your timeline, and you go into your DMs and this person saw your message, but they didn't say anything back. Like, that is not serving you. The integration would say, let me be aware without shame, without judgment. Let me just be aware that I'm feeling these feelings and emotions. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling left out. I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling not included. Why am I feeling not included? What is it about me that feels like I need to be included? This is peeling back the layers that then lead to the root cause. And once you start doing this, it's excavating. Once you start excavating the things in your life of what are these stories? Where did that story originate from? You can start to, with the help of a therapist or a coach, you start to trace it back to the original thought that, oh, okay, because I wasn't included in a lot of sleepovers when I was a child and I was an afterthought for invites, and I could feel that at the get-togethers that I wasn't really included, I now have the desire for people to pick me, choose me, love me. So I will do whatever it takes, even if that means manipulating people and changing myself for every single person I'm with so that I can feel from my outer experience, do you like me? Do you pick me? Do you want to be around me? Do you think I'm cool? Do you want to be my friend? Do you want to invite me to your party? Oh, you do? That feels good. That feels serving. Do you see where it like leads to these thoughts? We're like, oh, why am I letting that person's depiction of me, good, bad, and different, determine if I love myself? So for me, that was the big wake up call to realize that everyone around me, I had basically manipulated to like me because I did not like myself. And so that began the journey of, well, why do I not like myself? I need to be alone by myself so that I can actually spend time by myself to love myself. That I did not like being alone, because when I was alone, I felt all these feelings of unworthiness and relying on other people to keep that sustainable. When you're plugged into something outside of yourself, so when you're talking about the conscious observer, if you're living out of your body, out of your inner self, you're plugged into all these things. how many likes you got on your photo, how many people are following you. Does your boss think you're doing a good job? Does your boyfriend tell you that you're pretty every time you come downstairs with an outfit on? Like, don't shame it or judge it. Just notice.
Be aware.
Oh, I am relying on my boyfriend's depiction of me. Do we want our boyfriends or husbands to call us beautiful? Who doesn't?
Of course, but you don't need it.
No. And there's a way that if you are depending on that, imagine the pressure that you're putting on that person and all the people around you, that if you're putting this unconscious weight on someone to be the version of you that you need, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's not serving anyone.
No.
So the integration is noticing all of it and then bringing these things in, and then you start embodying it, and the embodying is living it for yourself. Living these words as if they're your own life. That's the work, because you'll be so uncomfortable, and it's important to have people in your circle to reach out to that understand that
speak your language.
And it's not about saying that like this person isn't on my level, so therefore like you're kicked out of my circle and you stay in my circle. There's no hierarchy to this, because if we do understand that everybody for the rest of their life to the time that they die, if you choose to do the inner work, we are all doing it. It's being able to be aware of, are you integrating this into your life? Do I feel like you are embodying this and living this, and it's having some place to land, that if I'm going to take the time to express what I'm feeling and working through, that you're not coming back at me to give me advice.
Yeah.
Stop trying to change people around you.
Yep.
Stop trying to like think that in order to be a good friend, you have to fix someone's problem. Or with a spouse, like with my husband, like it's not his job to change me. It's not his job to even give me advice. It's to hold the space for me to be all of me. All of you is welcome, and to see what's going on here so that we can arrive at a better, closer relationship. Your friends, your family, your partners, people you meet at the grocery store, all of those relationships all come back to the relationship you have with yourself.
Exactly. And it's exactly what we were saying at the beginning of this episode. It has nothing to do with the other person and everything to do with you. And the integration of this, I think you said it perfectly, to be aware of thoughts, feelings, emotions, whatever might come up, and not judge it, just to observe it. You don't have to put guilt on it. You don't have to put shame on it. You don't have to overanalyze it, but just be aware that you have a thought, feeling, emotion arise, disassociate with it, recognize that you are not that thought, you are not that emotion, you are not that feeling, whatever comes up, you're just experiencing it. And that kind of brings me into the next question that I wanted to talk about, because this was like levitating when you kind of really get it.
What?
In chapter 3. And then after this, I'm going to skip
chapter
down.
3.
Yeah.
How many chapters are there? And we're
like 12. No, there's
more.
18 or something. I'm going to skip down a little bit I really do keep bringing awareness to the beginning, because it's so powerful, the beginning. Chapter 3, Singer says that the spiritual begins to live in the seat of consciousness. Were you able to pull away and see your consciousness? And then I can kind of combine 6 and 7. Describe that awareness or shift in awareness that took place when events that happen, such as smelling a flower, is an experience of our own sense of reality. Did that shift how you view the world? Is everything like that an experience? And is that reality a perception of experience? So I remember reading the chapter, I think it's called Who Are You, or Who Am I, or something like that. I should have written that down. But Who Are You is a chapter. It's chapter 3. What a powerful chapter, because I don't know about you, but when I was reading it, I was able to really pull away and kind of see like a bright white light within my head, surrounded by, it was like a chamber of blackness and darkness, and then just this bright white light. And I was like, that's who I am. That light is who I am. And that light has been with me since I was born. It's going to be with me when I die. And that light is going to continue living on. Like, our bodies are just vessels. And I think that brings a lot of peace to death. And it's not fun talking about death, but
it's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
But when you really see yourself not as a human, but as this inner being that's conscious, it just brings in an overwhelming feeling of peace and relief that's like, okay, whatever happens to this body will not affect the inner consciousness. And being able to really pull away. It's almost like VR goggles, taking them off and really kind of back in. Like for me, I see it in my mind where it's like this darkness with like this bright light, and I'm like, that's me. And then I can look into the distance and I can almost see like goggles of my sight, and then to the far left and to the far right, senses of hearing. And then when I hold my hands out, like I can kind of see a far distant image of my hands in front of me, but not immediately through my eyes. Like when I open my eyes, I see it immediately, and I'm immediately that passenger in my body. But when I think of the chapter, Who Are You? And you can pull back and feel that consciousness, it all just becomes so far removed. And the feelings of thoughts are nowhere near that light that I see. And like I have anxiety, or I experience anxiety, I should say. And when I'm experiencing that and I pull it back to this scale, I'm able to immediately disassociate from it. And that was really powerful.
What do you feel when you disassociate from it?
Peace.
You feel? You instantly feel the peace.
Peace. And I hear Om, which yoga, I can get into that later. But that silent humming, that Om sound, the sound of the universe, the sound of all creation, I hear that, which is just so peaceful and very Om is very powerful.
This is me experiencing anxious. I am not anxiousness. This is me experiencing anxiousness. Oh, and then you remove, you're like, oh,
yeah.
Why are you experiencing that? What's going on here? That what brought that up?
And look, it's hard to do that. Like on Monday, I was having the day, like Chelsea, I was like voice messaging you on Monday. Like I was having a day on Monday, and I was just sad. I was crying, and I don't even, like, looking back, my hormones must have been crazy.
Yeah, but look at the clarity that you then had after that.
Yeah, huge
it's
clarity.
Using it. What is this leading you to?
Yes.
Using the anxiousness, using the emotion to see what's underneath that, because there's something that you're not sitting with or acknowledging or holding space for, to be like, oh, and then it was.
But I also want to say, like, it's not easy.
No.
Like when you're in the moment and you are fully in that human experience instead of that conscious or that spiritual experience, when you're in that human emotion and you're so wrapped up in it and you're feeling so human, and you're like, fuck all that. Like, fuck the consciousness. Like, I'm human, man. Like, I'm sad. I'm crying. Like, you get so wrapped up in it. It's hard to pull yourself out of it. It really is. But that's where the work comes in. Like, this is not, they call it a practice for a reason. It gets easier to snap into over time, but it's not easy. It's not easy to pull away. Go ahead.
I told you that quote before that Matt had told me about, let your breath be your first word.
I come back. I think I said it on the podcast a few weeks ago. God. I love it. Say it again.
And what you're talking about is, like, in that moment, it's not easy. You'll just keep going with the thoughts. Let your breath be your first word. Like, repeating that to myself, that when now it's a practice, and more, it happens automatically, that if I feel the thoughts starting to like spiral and add on to each other, I'll take, literally, this is why he talks about your breath and meditation. Your breath is so much more powerful than we give credit to. And almost like when people would say, oh, just take a deep breath. Fuck you. Don't tell me to take it. But the truth, if you stop, if you're feeling the anxiousness, literally breathe in through your nose, white, clean light, breathe it into your belly, into your lungs, fill your space, fill your vessel. This is your meat suit, right? Like you were saying, you are not, like, your soul is in this meat suit, right? It's your meat suit. Then you breathe that clean, white, conscious light into your body. You're slowing down. And when we slow down, that's where we arrive at the peace. When our thoughts are so busy, our nervous system is dysregulated. We're walking around most of the time with a dysregulated nervous system. It's in active mode. We got to bring in the sympathetic nervous system, which is the brake, to slow down, which is your breath. Then you can come to a place of neutrality to be like, okay, how can I approach this differently than how I might have reacted initially. You get that text message that you're like, oh, fuck this. I have words for this. And you want to react, or you feel like you have the thing that needs to be said, or the one up, or whatever. If you stop and take that deep breath and come into that inner peace, how would you handle it differently? Yeah. And that's the awareness to see, is it the roommate talking?
Is the roommate talking?
Who's going to answer this? And I think there's a lot of people, and I'm okay saying this, I think there's a lot of people who maybe forever will perceive me as my roommate. And I'm okay with that, because it's only what I view as who I am now, and how I will handle things, that our roommate has probably been at the forefront driving our vehicle. Not even just the fact that like, oh, they're in the car or that they're riding shoddy, but they are the one that has been driving the car. So yeah, that's okay. That's okay. And every day you have a choice to be a new version of yourself. So honestly, give yourself grace. And when you start living differently and acting differently, you attract different. So then different people, different places, different opportunities, that's what it means to change your reality. Because if you are a vibration, and your vibration is what creates your feelings and emotions, and your feelings and emotions are what create your thoughts. So if we start with our thoughts, we drop into our body, we feel our feelings and emotions, it changes our vibration. Guess what? You're changing your subconscious, and that changes your reality. So of course you can say, I'm living a whole different life this year than I did last year. Of course you can say that.
Yeah.
It's a whole different person.
It is. It's a whole different person.
Who could you be this time next year just by slowly starting to integrate this work?
Let's jump ahead a bit to page 121. Singer writes, if you really want to see why you do things, then don't do them and see what happens. This seems so simple. Have you ever abruptly stopped doing something, maybe a negative habit or behavior? What did you learn? And did you discover your underlying urges?
Yes.
Tell me.
I have a real-time example of this just this past weekend. So short little preface. This becomes easier. I just want to be really transparent. I just think we need more real of this, that talking about these concepts is great and they do have a result. But like the example I'm going to give, it's only been able to happen like you're saying, have you been able to cancel something out in real time?
Yeah.
That practice of being able to do, at least for myself, has taken nearly a year of slowly, because first you have to unravel. Like first you have to like see, like you have to practice giving yourself grace. You have to practice sitting with what's really going on. For me, that took a lot. I had a lot of shit to work through, and that's okay. But God bless my husband, because this work started pouring into, first it started with myself, and then the biggest other thing was because of my relationships with friends was a really big thing, because that was one of the deepest wounds that I've had was relationships with other people of any kind, with other women. And so that's been a lot of this year of just sitting with what needs to be rewired, how I need to think about myself differently. I knew at some point this work is never going to be over. So I knew at some point this was going to carry into my marriage, because I have a great marriage and I have a great foundation of my marriage. But when people say marriage is work, I now know why, because you're constantly choosing that one person. You're not running away from those problems. And if I desire for my marriage to be even healthier every year moving forward, then we need to deal with some stuff that we maybe haven't dealt with or realize what could be causing problems. And my husband is very quiet, but he's very intelligent, and I'm a loud person. I'm a dominating energy. I usually get what I want. I'm a very fiery person. So Matt doesn't let me just get what I want, but he doesn't put up fights with me, because usually it wouldn't get anywhere. So I think, not that he tried to be passive in some areas, I could feel that there was some built up, not resentment, but I could feel, and not to pour into human design, but that's another thing I would love to talk about on here, is knowing how you work. And I could feel from Matt that there was a disconnect with us, that I could feel that there was something he wanted to say, or there was a disconnect with us, but he didn't want to say it, or he'd be like, no, everything's fine. long story short, with opening up this studio, I've been gone a lot more. He's had to take on more responsibilities at the home. Not that one is designated for a woman or a man, but just there's been a lot. We haven't had as much one-on-one time. And I'm really big on our intimacy, even outside the bedroom, that your intimacy outside the bedroom is what pours into the bedroom. Sex for women is based on emotions. It's not about, hey, baby, do you want to get it on? Like,
It's so true.
do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you don't emotionally turn me on, but if you emotionally turn me on, then I will like
And that's
move
the only
my
way
hips for
it's
you.
portrayed in movies and media. It's like the girls are just always horny.
Yeah. And so why would they think differently?
So why would they think so we just think something's wrong with us.
Yes. So I've been
That's
tired.
a whole other
It's a whole
episode.
other episode. So I've been a lot more tired lately, not really like interested in having sex at night because I've been wanting to go to bed. That's not the issue. The issue is I could feel there was a disconnect with us. So I brought this to Matt. I could feel that there were thoughts. It was having the awareness that there's something going on. And am I willing to approach this as we need to work through this? We need to sit and see what's the cause, not pointing the finger at him to be like, if you would just be more emotional with me, if you would just open up more, then I wouldn't be this way. Even knowing this work, it started off petty at pointing out that like I don't like his clothes. And it was so stupid. And Matt was like, first of all, fuck off. Why are you like picking out my clothes? It's like, what is this really about? And I apologized. And to tie in the meditation, when I do head spas, we're quiet the whole time. So it's basically like a meditation for myself. I don't actively sit in stillness, like on the floor to meditate. I'll walk and meditate, or being here at the head spa. We have this gorgeous window in front of us, and there's this really big tree that I've just been watching over the last couple of weeks. And I'll come in with a thought or something that is bothering me or that I'm working through. And I'll just sit in that silence during the head spa, and I just sit with it. And if you sit with it in your own way, and you connect to your higher consciousness and you remove the ego to see what's really going on here, I was able to really see that the issue with Matt and I is that I was a lot of the problem, that I had created this reputation in our relationship that if he were to speak on how he really felt, I would make it about me. And like, well, you're not understanding me. And he didn't feel safe enough to express those emotions, that it wasn't a safe space that he could really be honest with how he was feeling, and that I wouldn't take it personal, and that we could see how this could bring clarity. But as an intuitive and my human design, I could feel the disconnect. I could feel that there was something he wanted to say. So it was creating all this tension that he did want to say something. There was something that was bothering him, but he felt like he couldn't. And so by admitting that to him and being like, listen, I haven't created a safe space for you to be able to express how you're feeling. The minute that we had that conversation and we created a night for us to cook together, and he just slowly was like, okay, can I be honest? I was like really surprised that the Chick-fil-A for the boys ended up being $45. Like, is that a little ridiculous? And instead of me being like, bro, first of all, little do you know, I did the math to see, was it more cost effective to get the tray of nuggets or get 3 kids meal? Rowan had a sleepover. So like, instead of just reacting how I usually do, slowing it down to have a conversation, and then seeing his body literally relax to be like, I can have a thought. I can have my own emotion. If all of you is welcome here, then how come all of me isn't welcome here? And we instantly, years of problems that we've had with communication erased. And now within just the last 3 days, Matt is like constantly telling things that are like on his mind, and I don't react anymore because I'm not making it about me. That doesn't change how he loves me. It doesn't change that I don't get what I desire out of our relationship. It's actually brought us closer.
And I also want to say, like, listening as someone that would have been an outsider, I would have been like, if you're listening to this, you're probably like, oh, you're lucky you're married to a guy that's so open about this stuff and enlightened about this stuff. He used to not be. Like, right when you met him, he was not this.
I used to say
guy.
when I met him, money comes frequently and easily. And he was like, that's the dumbest fucking shit I've ever heard. Now it's a slow progression. And also, my husband is 32. I'm 33. He will straight up say if we met when we were 25, we wouldn't have even been friends, because you have to give someone credit that like everyone is growing through their own life. And so wherever that they are, you are where you are, and it's a starting place for you. It's a slow progression of like, have a book club with your husband, send a podcast, like, don't do it to get something out of it. Work on yourself, and by you living out your expression of you change your reality.
If
people that used to bother me
living authentically, everything else will fall in line. And that includes like if you are dating someone, or you want a friend, or you want someone that's close to you to kind of begin to speak the same language as you. If you live authentically, it's going to naturally happen.
You have to live it.
But you have to live it. You have to believe it.
Yeah. You can't just listen to these podcasts and be like,
oh, I'm good.
Listen to the podcast too. No, if you start living it in your life, then your actions will change, and that's going to have an effect on the people around you. So if I listen to the podcast and I start integrating those things, I show up differently in my marriage. It's going to therefore then change my marriage without me making it about them needing to change in our marriage or in our relationship. My mom will never do this work, probably. Never say never. But my sisters and I can see how much my mom has changed just through osmosis of us acting differently.
Good word.
The boundaries of us having with her, she doesn't get the same reaction out of us because we don't give her that same reaction.
Yes.
So then your relationship does change with your mom because you show up to it differently.
It's
about you.
It's always about you.
Taylor Swift.
Okay. One final question, because I don't know if you know this, but we're already an hour and 15 minutes in.
I'm not shocked.
I'm not either. We could go on for another
I thought you were going to say an hour
2
and 50.
hours.
I would have believed that.
No, so would I.
Okay.
Okay. And then we could also dive deeper into the heart. Do you want to talk about the heart?
I'm cozy. I'm good till 3:30.
I have yoga teacher training, so I got a jet set. Okay. You want to talk about the heart? You want to talk about freedom from yourself?
What do you want to talk about?
Whatever you want to talk about. What's going to light you up?
What were the options? The heart or what?
The heart or freedom from yourself. I'll read the question and then you tell me. The heart would be an open-ended discussion, but the question that I have is about freedom.
I like freedom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll go freedom.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have both disruptive, painful feelings and spiritual awareness or freedom?
Every day.
Do you see the difference between freedom for yourself versus freedom from yourself?
Freedom for yourself or freedom of yourself?
From yourself, yeah.
Freedom of yourself, freedom from yourself.
Freedom for yourself.
For yourself. Freedom
versus
for yourself.
freedom from yourself. Freedom from yourself definitely resonates.
I would say from myself. Yeah, because you are not you.
You're not you.
You're not.
You're not your thoughts. You're not your body. You're not.
I believe in past life regression.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is the avatar that my soul chose for right now. And I'm going to have different experiences this round. So by like when you were explaining like your consciousness and like removing yourself, it makes it easier to be like, well, why the fuck wouldn't I go for that dream?
Yeah.
Because this is what I came here to do.
Yep.
If I'm going to get caught up in what you think about my dream, that's your stuff. Am I going to live for you?
100%.
And that's the freedom that I truly feel, because I know I was living for everyone else.
And I feel like this quote really sums up freedom a lot. What a relief to realize I am not the thoughts in my head. Who am I then? The one that sees them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what will happen here. I'll have a thought and be like, oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
And I don't know where I originally heard this. Every time when I bring someone into like a meditation before we start the head spot, I say like a version of the same thing, but sometimes I'll say this and it's not my own words. I heard it. I don't know if it was in a meditation of a women's circle or somewhere along the line, is that when you're with your own thoughts and you're just noticing, like in meditation, a lot of people think meditation, you have to be quiet and still. It's let it be busy and you're just noticing it. And the way that I visualize it is from wherever I heard this, that noticing it, like I literally picture myself on a dock of like a river, and I'm sitting on the dock and noticing a leaf. if I were sitting on this real dock in real life and there would be a leaf, I would just be observing the leaf. Oh, look, there's a leaf and it's floating by. And maybe it gets like caught on a stick and it's there for a while and you're noticing it, and then it like sets itself free, and then you're just observing it.
You're not becoming the leaf.
No. And you're not like questioning, why did the leaf
show
do
up?
that?
Yeah.
Like
where did this come from? Does
Yeah.
this leaf have, I love that analogy.
Yeah. So it's like, and then it's also simple to just breathe in the observation of the leaf. And you're like, it's peaceful to sit on that dock and just be like, oh, and then it's gone. And then you're like, oh, look, another leaf. And that one's going to do something different. And maybe it's going to show you something. And maybe like the leaf pushes up against a piece of trash and you're like, oh, that needs to come out. Or it pushes up against a boat and you're like, oh, look, like I've been looking for a boat. Like,
yes,
it just is like, observe the thought.
I love that.
And you are not the thought, but they lead you places. And if you have safety, which is that first, it's just the chakras make so much, it's just wild now. Like safety and belonging is the first chakra. That's the root. Do you feel safe? That's where you should start. Do you feel safe in your own body? Do you feel safe? Like, don't read this book if you are in an environment, like where would you feel the safest reading this? Creating an environment where you feel safe and belong is going to set the tone for how you're going to perceive that information. If you're going to read that on a busy train and you're like dysregulated and there's stuff going on, like you're not going to be able to absorb that information.
Absolutely.
Versus if you're like, what feels really cozy for you? Oh, my bedtime alarm goes off at 6:45 p.m. because that's how we start. Reagan goes to gets his bedtime. And so I get excited because once the boys are down, I have my diffuser, I've got my mood lighting, and my new bed, and I've got my space to read my book, even if it's 2 pages and then I get tired and then I go to bed. It's like, that's my space for me where I feel safe and cozy for what I'm going to be reading and observing and absorbing. So safety and belonging to be able to ascend to your higher consciousness. And so a lot of this information, if you focus so much on this concepts and only in the crown without working through everything else, starting with safety, then it has nowhere to land. And that's going to make integration hard. So setting yourself free is to first start with working through the chakras, in my opinion. Yoga helps with that too, but sitting with safety and belonging first and letting things build, which then you lead to the heart, which is part of setting yourself free.
And we need to have a whole episode on the heart.
Which I'll just kind of share one thing about the heart, which I think is fascinating. When I started doing like more work we don't go over the chakras in somatic mind body coaching class, but they're part of the body. You have chakras in your hands, which we underestimate why touch is so powerful. And so when you're touching, when you're hugging someone, like you're sending energy, just makes a lot of sense. But in the chakras, they're energy centers. And so like that specific area is where that content of that specific kind of energy. So the heart is all about love, worthiness, compassion. It lives in that area of the body. The heart is the first chakra where you go outside of yourself. So your first chakra is the root, safety and belonging. Second chakra is your sacral, your pelvic bowl, which we could do a whole topic on that. Creativity, passion, desire. Your sex organs are there. It makes a lot of sense. That's where babies are born. Creativity, new life. And then you move up to the sacral, which is your identity. Then the heart. The heart is the first one where you are going outside of yourself to give what you have created a foundation on outside of yourself. We actually have fascia, muscles around our heart and our lungs. And when we feel anxiousness, that fascia tightens. So this is how people die of a broken heart, or why we create illness. And think of all the men out there who like die of heart problems, is because when we are not in the heart, when we are not coming from love, when we do not love ourselves, when we don't feel that compassion, when we don't feel worthy, we're just constantly tightening that fascia around our heart, and that causes illness. So it always comes back to the heart to set yourself free. I actually did have a quote that I wrote down from this book. And it's actually towards the end. You want to be at peace and enjoy life. You don't want your happiness to be conditional of other people. It's bad enough that your happiness is conditional of your own behavior. Your happiness is a condition of your own behavior. It's already bad enough that we have to sit with our own shit, our own stuff.
Yep.
You're going to then add on that and take on everyone else's idea of themselves and of you. Oh my God.
No, thank you.
So already like remove it.
Yeah.
You are not responsible for other people's feelings and emotions. And that's really hard. And taking radical responsibility that, okay, if I know what I need from myself last year when I was like, I need to do this inner work. I don't know where this is going to lead me, but I needed to go so far within that it cut people off. And that was so hard. But if I make this be about them and how this would affect them, I had to take radical responsibility that if I do this, then I may lose this.
Right.
But who's more important here, me or them? And I have to constantly choose myself.
Right.
And even in my marriage, I have to choose myself, and learning how to do that is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But it's already bad enough that we have to be our own worst critic. We have to deal with our own voice. We're then going to layer that on with other people's stuff. Go hang out with your family on a Sunday dinner. That will be the test of how this work is hitting you, you know, because there's nothing like your family to bring up your old ways, your conditioned ways. See how you are around certain people and just observe, oh, what does this need to show me? What is this showing me about myself? And what do I need to do or change or soften? It's not always changing. It's like, what can I soften so I arrive at more peace and love within my heart?
I feel like with the holidays coming up, this is a very
Oh my God, I
good
didn't even
time
think
to
about the
test
holidays. Yeah. Go be quiet.
Chelsea, I could talk forever about this.
Oh, it's 10:40.
We're at time, man. So guys, that
That's
was
it?
the first ever Manifest Book Club. This is not the last time you're going to hear from Chelsea.
Yay.
Don't worry about that.
Oh, we're not done.
We're so not done. But that was The Untethered Soul,
so good.
The Journey Beyond Yourself by Michael Singer.
It's free on Audible.
Oh, good.
It's free on
Okay.
Audible, so really no excuse to get started.
Would love to know your thoughts on this. Maybe we can do like a live or something so that people can
questions.
chat about it in
Yeah.
real time. I think that would be really amazing. So I'll get back to you guys on that of how we can be more interactive about this topic specifically. But I did want to announce the next book for our book club. And I'm glad we talked about integration because the next book that I chose integrates what we've learned into the real world.
What is it?
And into yourself. So the book is, and I'm sure a lot of you have already read it, but I have not. So I'm very excited. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Matt read that.
Of course he did. He is
The Power
king.
of Now.
The Power of Now.
Okay.
And that episode is going to go live November 30th. 2023. So that is the last Thursday of the month of November. The next book for the Manifest Book Club is The Power of Now. I'll have it linked down below.
Okay.
If you want to purchase it, I will also have this link down below. I will have everything for Chelsea linked down below where you guys can find her. If you guys are in the Wyomissing, Philadelphia, Lancaster, Berks County, Bucks County, honestly, anywhere in like the tri-state, Jersey, Delaware, Philly, PA area, I highly recommend to come book a head spa with Chelsea. Her work is truly incredible, and you will leave getting so much more than you booked for, and you will be absolutely hooked and obsessed, and it's just such a sense of peace, and it goes so much deeper than the service that you offer. It really is. It's really healing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for being here today.
Yeah, this is great.
This was absolutely great. And yeah, this is not the last time you guys are going to see Chelsea. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, this gets me excited for the next season of 5-Lane Highway,
Which is her podcast.
This next season is it's about more of this. It's really a reflection of this last year of like what we went through. So yeah, this is just the beginning of this type of conversation, which I do think we need. So I'm honored to be here to get that ball rolling. We need it.
We need it.
Yeah.
We need it.
All
right,
alone.
guys. Well, normally I'd say have the best Monday, but it's Thursday. So have an amazing weekend. Marinate with this over the weekend. And I will talk to you guys on, is there an eclipse this weekend?
Yes. Full moon and eclipse.
Powerful weekend ahead. Should we be doing anything?
This is the final roundup from last year with Scorpio and Taurus. So just go inside. Read the book. Go inside yourself. Be reflective.
Okay.
Turn your phone off.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth?
Stop scrolling.
Hi. Does that normally happen? People just wave? Do you know who she is?
No.
Someone waved at us as we were recording this. That was nice.
Gorgeous.
She was very pretty.
She doesn't look like she's going to Pilates.
No, she should have came in here and recorded the podcast with us. Anyway, all right.
Okay.
Bye, guys. We love you. See you on Monday. Bye.